Yes, we're back on the 67 Hail Hail channel on YouTube with me, Hamish Carton. I've got Jackie McNamara here alongside John McGinley as well. Right, we'll get into it, guys. We're going to chat a little bit about not as much the Ferencváros game itself, but the comments made by Neil Lennon post-match. For me as a fan, it was almost the more concerning part of the night was the comments he made after the game rather than what actually unfolded on the pitch. He obviously called out some players for not wanting to be at the club. He then kind of backtracked in that statement a few days later. Some concerning stuff there, Jackie, coming out from the manager after that game?
Yeah, I say concerning. I think he's frustrated. I think, as I said, I've been in that position myself after games and the camera's there and everything's going through your head. The biggest thing is disappointment. And I don't think it helped with his comments, that it was going to ask questions or more questions going to be asked rather than, just sit back and accept what he said, So I think it's let everybody look at the squad and right, who's wanting to leave, whose attitude's not there. And I know he backtracked a few days later, which you expect him to do once he settles down and sees what the fallout is. But he's got a difficult job, Neil. He's first and foremost he's a fan that wants to do well. It's a massive season for the club, and he'll not want to let anybody down. But I think that was maybe a bit of pressure getting to him after that game and a bit of frustration.
Gordon Strachan made a good point on Celtic TV, I think it was, on the Path to Paradise I was watching at the weekend, where he was kind of talking about what it's like to be a manager after a game, after a disappointment, just like you are there. And he said if it was up to him, managers wouldn't give a post-match interview. What's your thoughts on that kind of thing? Do you think Lennon was just kind of saying what he could to get through the interview at that stage and that's why he's backtracked? Or do you think he just kind of let it all boil up? I mean, is it easy to do in that scenario? I couldn't imagine it myself. I mean, I would be a nightmare. I would be beside myself.
I've seen what you get like, John, after defeats.
What's it like, Jackie, when you lose a game or something upsetting happens and you've got to face the Scottish media?
Yeah, it's difficult, but again, it's part and parcel of the job. Right. I wouldn't say I would agree ever with Gordon, but in some ways you can understand why he said it, because your emotions are there. But to be honest, that's part and parcel of the job. I think we look at games after it. A lot of people don't want to hear what they've said if they won 4-5-0. I don't really want to hear what he said. It was great today, but they want to hear situations like that to ask the questions, like they did after the game about the strikers, about different things. So I think it's important that the managers do that. As a manager, I found it, monotonous in terms of speaking to the press all the time. Maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Before the game, after the game's different. Right after the game, your adrenaline's there. It does take a little bit, just like you were a player, to calm down. It seems you've just been in the dressing room and maybe getting 1 or 2 players are rollicking for making a bad error, which cost again the second goal. So the little things can be fresh in Neil's mind, going in there, and a lot of anger and frustration. Maybe 1 or 2 players have been looking to him leave in the window, and that's built up with him as well.
Do you think Lennon's the type of character, you know him as obviously as a player in the dressing room, do you think he would have been given the hairdryer treatment? Obviously, to me, to us as fans, he seems like that kind of manager. But there's been rumblings in the past that he's perhaps quite mellowed out in his older years, now that he's a little bit older. Do you think he went into that dressing room and gave El Hamid what for?
I'd be surprised if he didn't. I think he has mellowed quite a bit. But Neil was the same as a player. He was very volatile, but he was very outspoken and wanted to win, like a lot of us.
Yeah, it's an interesting point I think you raised a couple of minutes ago, Jackie, about the amount of interviews managers have to do nowadays. I was at Rugby Park on Saturday and I think both managers went through 4 or 5 post-match interviews, and that's just post-match. They had to speak to Sky, BBC, press, club channels, etc. So it's I think it's something us fans who maybe don't realise that Neil Lennon's having to do that, and I'd assume for a European game he's having to do even more interviews, and that's just on the day of the game. He's got to do them in the lead up to the game as well. But no, in terms of of the actual players that we're touching on, Olivier and Cham and Christopher Ayer seem to be the two, judging from reports. Neil Lennon didn't actually mention any players by names. I know that Karamoko Dembele's been mentioned as a player that's maybe in that kind of looking for a move as well, hence why he's not been in the squad lately. And who was the other one? Ryan Christie, I think, has been mentioned as well. What would you do with these kind of guys, Jackie, if they are indeed looking to move away from the club? Can they continue to play at Celtic if they're angling for a move away?
Yeah, it's no different. You can rewind 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It happens every year. A few years ago we lost Dembele, the last bit of the window. Some players, as horrible as it seems, but a lot of them use Celtic as a springboard to get to the English Premier League. Wanyama's, you can list them all. Neil's job is managing them, managing the players, and making sure they give everything they have for the club while they're there, and their attitudes are right, their attitudes right towards the team, their attitudes right towards the game, because the only way they earn their move is by doing things properly. If they're producing and doing well week in, week out, there's attraction there and teams will come in and bid for them. But if there's not, who would want somebody with a bad attitude anyway? So, Neil's got a job to do to put the team out, but they've got a job to be professional and do their best while they're playing, do their talking on the pitch.
Part of the reason Lennon's comment surprised me, of course we need to say that he did walk them back a few days later, was that for me it wasn't effort, wasn't the problem in the Champions League match. So, I can't fault Cham or Ayer for the way they played in terms of what they kind of given to the team right now. It's more that I'd be worried about, is it obvious when you're in a dressing room as a player, is it obvious that your teammate is angling for a move? Does it make you trust them less on the pitch? Does it make a little bit of ill feeling in the dressing room? What is it like when you're sitting there in a dressing room and you're looking around and you know that 2 or 3 of these guys don't really want to be playing here?
The players. I can go back to probably before Hamish was born. With guys, the Canyons, Van Hooijdonk, back to then when they were looking to leave, and it happens all the time. You want the players, but when they train these guys, they didn't, as much as they wanted a move, or maybe angling for the move, or the agents angling for a move. But they didn't change how they were in training or how they were in the games. The attitude, they were top players, and it should be the same. Just as I said, they should be doing. If teams are watching or teams want them or they want to leave, the best way to do that is by playing your best football for the club. The names you mentioned, they've done okay. I think everybody's replaceable at the club. We've seen that over a number of years, but we thought Dembele wasn't replaceable, and suddenly Edouard's come in and an opportunity in the back of that. Now he's irreplaceable just now. So it changes. Van Dijk was irreplaceable, but everybody is. It's just giving them the time and the opportunity to do that and the right recruitment.
It's strange, Hamish, isn't it? Because, as fans, you get attached to players, whereas players obviously are looking out for their own careers as a priority, as you would if you were a professional footballer. What's your feelings on Ayer and Cham as a Celtic fan?
I wouldn't be massively worried about losing Christopher Ayer, especially as long as we replaced him. I think he's a decent enough player, Ayer, but he's far from the finished article for me. There was comparisons not so long ago about him and Van Dijk, and he's like miles away from even the level Van Dijk was maybe in his first season with us. So presuming we got, 15 million for Ayer, is that realistic? And spent half of that on another Julian, who I think for me Julian's a much better defender than Ayer. I know he has his struggles as well on plastic pitches, etc. But for me, if we could get another Julian, Shane Duffy, hopefully he's going to be that player for us as well, albeit on loan. And Cham's a weird one. In many ways, I don't blame him for looking for a move, because I think he's good enough to start for us, and I don't really understand why he's not been starting more games. So I'd like to keep him around, because I think he's one of our most talented players, but he's obviously consistency's his big issue. The other thing we're going to touch on, obviously you mentioned a couple of players there, John, and it's looking like a bit of a busy summer at Celtic in terms of players coming in and players going out, and it didn't always look that way at the start of the window. I think if we went back to the start of the window, I kind of looked at it as being one that if we kept the majority of the team from 9 in a row, maybe added 1 or 2 players, we would win 10, but it's turned into a bit of a kind of busy one, hasn't it? I mean, why do you think that one is?
Yes, it's a strange one, because I think Lennon himself even talked a lot about consistency between the squads from season to season. But, as Jackie pointed out there, sometimes you can lose players and it freshens the team up and sparks them on to bigger and better things, such as the 97-98 season. If you lose your star players, it doesn't necessarily need to be the end of things. What I'd like to get Jackie's thoughts on is just the thought of Lennon perhaps trying to bring in his own men now. Obviously, Olivier Cham wasn't his signing. Ayer wasn't his signing. They are Brendan Rodgers' projects. If at the end of the day, I know Ayer arrived just before Dyla left, but he was really developed by Rodgers. Do you think he's trying to build a dressing room now of his men that he can trust to kind of deliver the silverware for Celtic in this massive season?
Possibly, yeah. That's a real possibility. It's like he said though, and Cham's not, maybe in his eyes, had a fair crack at it under Neil.
Mm-hmm.
In the position that he likes. I know he's kind of tinkered a little bit between Callum and Scott, and maybe played him maybe one in front. But and Cham, I've always liked the look of him, and consistency is difficult to get if you're not consistently playing as well.
Mm-hmm.
To get that run in the team or a consistent position. Ayer, sometimes I just think he's a bit, soft in certain areas. Concentration, but he is still young. He's still got a lot of improvement in him. But there seems to be a lot of talk that he wants to leave. But I think Neil will want players in his team that want to be there first and foremost. If players are looking to go or play under him, he'll be wanting to make sure everybody's with him for this season, because I think you see at the start, with the tension in this season from Bolingoli, little bits there, the European game, everything's ready to kind of boil over quickly, and you need strong mentality. There's going to be ups and downs, but how you handle that, how you handle the European game to the Motherwell game. As I said, the league is the most important this season. The Champions League would have been great, because that's what we want, to hear that Champions League tune and watch our team playing in it. But it's not to be there. The European thing's still alive, but the most important thing is it sorts the team out for this season, and we get 10 in a row.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree with that, and I suppose this Celtic team's shown over the last few years that they can come over bad results. I mean, you think back to last season, Cluj, Copenhagen, the Derby defeat in New Year, and they inevitably bounce back. So hopefully we can do the same this year. That's us for another day on the channel. Big thanks to Jackie and John again. We're back for more later in the week. If you've not yet subscribed, we would really appreciate you doing that as well. Until next time, take care and hail hail.